from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. If you want to join us live, feel free to call into the show, 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. We're going to get into a number of things tonight, not the least of which is the reaction to the hearing today with the big tech CEOs. The CEOs of Meta and TikTok and others who were testifying on Capitol Hill. And I want to get into that. I also want to get into a little bit of what's going on in the world of higher education, where we see so much spilling over, right? They closed the school, and this wasn't higher education, this was elementary education, where they closed the school, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, to make space for illegal aliens, right? That legit happened in New York City, and they put these kids on remote instruction, so they're doing it online, school online. Parents are probably having to stay home from work so they could stay with their kids. You know, doesn't matter if we inconvenience people because we have to make space for the illegal aliens. That's number one. Then you have number two in New York City. This was a classic one. There's a video of a cop trying to take somebody into custody, two cops, and then as they're doing it, four or five guys surround these cops. They start kicking them while they're down on the ground, tussling with the guy. It turns out they're all illegal immigrants, and they don't have any respect for authority. That happened. We also have, so we're going to have some discussion on that. We're also going to talk about the the governor, right? You have the governor of the city of New York that, in effect, said, let's deport them for beating up the cops. Kathy Hochul. Listen, I rarely agree with her, but looks like she's under attack for saying let's deport them, because you can't say things like that, right? You're not allowed. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, about, you know, what happened with this video that went viral yesterday of cops getting beat up by a bunch of illegal aliens. I mean, it's a crazy thing that's going on, as far as I can tell, right? I mean, I hadn't seen this before, right? I've never seen a group of illegal immigrants beating up the NYPD in my lifetime, but that's where we are. Now, let me see here. Next story I want to talk about. Oh, this is a classic. This was from last night. I didn't get to it. Hezbollah terrorists claim they're going to stop attacking U.S. troops to prevent embarrassment for Baghdad. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it just doesn't get more rich than that one, right? And we got a bunch of clips of audio that I want to get to. I also want to talk a little bit about what's happening with this race for president, right? There's now some talk about RFK Jr. potentially running as a libertarian, right? He was making an independent run. He decided not to challenge Biden. And again, honestly, I don't know why. I think the best thing that RFK Jr. could have done was run against Biden, challenge him, and force him to debate. Then, even if he doesn't get the nomination, he could then come back with the momentum he's gained over all these months with people, you know, while he was campaigning, and then he could run as an independent. Why not? But he didn't do that. So now there's talk about this. Honestly, I got to tell you, I think RFK Jr. would have had a good shot at making a good impact with his campaign. I don't know if he could win or not, but I know he could have made a good impact. But I think he's taken away his own ability to actually to make that impact, because you need to be in the game, right? You can't run for president if you're not out there running for president. So sadly, that's the case there. Now, I want to talk about a little bit about Director Wray, because he was on Capitol Hill today as well, and he says that they are not going to be prosecuting any nonviolent Hamas protesters. Now, what's interesting is they totally did prosecute all of the nonviolent January 6th people, right? Everybody who was protesting outside, people didn't even go in the building, right? We talked with Brandon Strzok a number of times on this program. He was making a video outside the Capitol and got charged with all sorts of stuff. Lately, they used a KKK charge against him, if you remember the last time he came on. I mean, it's just absolutely insane, the things that they're doing. So it makes me wonder, why? Why are they not charging the pro-Hamas militants or protesters with anything? But Christopher Wray was saying this on Capitol Hill. Check this out.
Director Wray, could you assure the American public today that no nonviolent protester about a ceasefire of the Middle East will be investigated or surveilled by the FBI?
We are not going to be investigating nonviolent First Amendment activity.
And could you just assure, whatever their position is on the Middle East or the 2024 election, if there is an American who's out there engaged in expressing their view, whether that is for a ceasefire or whatever that is, the FBI is not going to be investigating them or surveilling them, correct?
Our mission is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution, and we intend to do both. We embrace both parts of that mission. In our view, it doesn't matter what you're ticked off about or who you're ticked off at. There's a right way under the First Amendment to exercise those views, and we're going to help protect that. And there's a wrong way to exercise those views, and that's violence and threats, and we are going to investigate that.
So there you have Director Wray saying, look, we're not doing anything. You've heard what he said. To that I say, man, this guy, I wish I could say I think he's in the best interest of the people, but I just don't. I think he's in the best interest of himself and those in the political class that he protects. He's not here to protect the people. He's here to be kind of like a henchman for the political class of both sides, right? Just whatever seems to be most expedient at the time. And that's a shame. And I think that spills over into real life. And we saw it happening in Florida not too long ago when DeSantis was going at Disney and Disney was coming back at him. And they filed a lawsuit against him, right? Switching gears a little bit here. When they had that back and forth with the property there in Orlando. And today a federal judge tossed out Disney's lawsuit. And I'll tell you how it goes. I don't convolute it for you, right? This is in the Hill, by the way. Former judge today tossed Disney's lawsuit against DeSantis out, saying that it accused him and other officials of unconstitutionally retaliating against Disney for political reasons. U.S. District Judge Alan Windsor, an appointee of former President Trump's, ruled that Disney lacked the legal standing to sue DeSantis and that the company's free speech claims also failed on the merits. The ruling hands a major win to DeSantis in his escalating legal fight with the entertainment conglomerate, which has a major presence in the state through its flagship Disney World property. A lengthy battle between Disney and the governor ensued after he signed the Parental Rights in Education Act, which many people decided to call, critics of it called, the Don't Say Gay Bill, back in March of 2022. The law restricts instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in classrooms, preventing teachers from kindergarten through third grade from teaching lessons on those topics of gender identity and sexual orientation. It also prohibits all teachers through 12th grade from instruction on topics that are not age appropriate, according to the bill. Now, at the time, Bob Chapek was the CEO of Disney. He criticized the legislation after it was passed, calling it a challenge to basic human rights. That's an interesting way of putting it. And he vowed to work to repeal the law and support advocacy groups that were fighting against similar bills in other states. Obviously, he got tossed out. They brought back Bob Iger, and we saw Disney lose a ton of money, right? People just gave up on Disney. In the aftermath, Florida legislation moved to revoke a special status that the company had, giving it some self-governing power for their 25,000-acre theme park. And we remember when that happened. And DeSantis signed legislation dissolving the district that was known as the Reedy Creek Improvement District last February and created a new board. Disney then sued DeSantis and the Commerce Secretary and members of the new board, accusing them of politically retaliating against the company in violation of their free speech rights. Windsor granted DeSantis' motion to dismiss Disney's lawsuit by finding that the company had no legal standing, meaning the right to sue. Disney has not alleged any specific actions the new board took or will take because of the governor's alleged control, Windsor wrote in his 17-page opinion. Let's see here. This thing wraps up here, saying if Disney had an actual claim that they would have, been able to move forward. So big win for DeSantis on this one, and a surprising one, but a win for, I think, for all Americans, where, you kind of check some corporate power, and we oftentimes don't see that happening. Some will say that this is not checking corporate power, but allowing the government to try to silence a corporation. I don't think that's the case. Who's silencing Disney, right? They own everything. So anyway, your thoughts on that when we continue. And, of course, I want to get into this tech censorship debate that happened on Capitol Hill today with CEOs making their case and even one of them apologizing. Mark Zuckerberg offered a mea culpa, and we've got the audio. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So the CEOs of big tech firms were on Capitol Hill today, and some of them got pressed really hard by Republican senators. And we've got a clip of audio that I want you to hear of Senator Josh Hawley ripping into Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg subsequently then stops for a mea culpa. It's not the full clip, but I have a good piece of the clip, and I want you to check it out.
Did I hear you say in your opening statement that there's no link between mental health and social media use?
Senator, what I said is I think it's important to look at the science. I know people widely talk about this as if that is something that's already been proven, and I think that the bulk of the scientific evidence does not support that.
Well, really, let me just remind you of some of the science from your own company. Instagram studied the effect of your platform on teenagers. Let me just read you some quotes from the Wall Street Journal's report on this. Company researchers found that Instagram is harmful for a sizable percentage of teenagers, most notably teenage girls. Here's a quote from your own study. Quote, "We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls." Here's another quote. Teens blamed Instagram, this is your study, for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. This reaction was unprompted and consistent across all groups. That's your study.
Senator, we try to understand the feedback and how people feel about the services. We can improve.
Wait a minute, your own study says that you make life worse for 1 in 3 teenage girls. You increase anxiety and depression. That's what it says, and you're here testifying to us in public that there's no link. You've been doing this for years. For years, you've been coming in public and testifying under oath that there's absolutely no link. Your product is wonderful. The science is nascent, full speed ahead, while internally, you know full well your product is a disaster for teenagers.
Senator,
and yet
that's
you
not
keep
true.
Right on doing what you're doing, right?
That's not true. That's not true.
Let me show you some other facts I know that you're familiar with. Wait a minute. That's not a question. That's not a question. Those are facts, Mr. Zuckerberg. That's not a question.
Those aren't facts.
Let me show you some more facts. Here's some information from a whistleblower who came before the Senate, testified under oath in public. He worked for you. It's a senior executive. Here's what he showed he found when he studied your products. So, for example, this is girls between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. 37% of them reported that they had been exposed to nudity on the platform unwanted in the last 7 days. 24% said that they had experienced unwanted sexual advances they'd been propositioned in the last 7 days. 17% said they had encountered self-harm content pushed at them in the last 7 days. Now, I know you're familiar with these stats because he sent you an email where he lined it all out. I mean, we've got a copy of it right here. My question is, who did you fire for this? Who got fired because of that?
Senator, we study all of this because it's important and we want to improve our services.
Well, you just told me a second ago you studied it, that there was no linkage. Who did you
Senator,
fire?
I said you mischaracterized.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
Senator, this is why we're building all
Who
these
did you
different
fire?
tools. Senator, I don't think that's.
Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that.
Because you didn't fire anybody, right? You didn't take any significant
I don't think
action.
it's appropriate to talk about like
It's not
individual
appropriate.
HR decisions.
Do you know who's
public
sitting
like that.
behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a single
happy
person?
All right, Senator Josh Hawley deserves a standing ovation for this one. I think his questioning of Zuckerberg was right on point. And Hawley, when he prompts him to look behind him, Zuckerberg does get up. And he actually turns around and apologizes to the families. Now, if you know how the setup works in Capitol Hill, you're sitting at this kind of like a dais type of thing with a microphone in front of you, with a little placard in front of you, a little tent card that says Mr. Zuckerberg or whatever. And he's, facing off against those guys who are like in a U-shaped table, the senators that are, doing the questioning. And Zuckerberg does get up out of his chair. He turns around. He faces these families when prompted to, and he offers an apology. Listen to this.
You haven't compensated a single victim. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well,
they're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
And you couldn't hear the beginning. It's because, he's away from the mic when he's addressing the families face-to-face. But he says, I apologize to you, and I'm sorry that your families had to suffer. And then he goes into the rest of it that I think you were able to hear. And I think this is outstanding, again, because honestly, that's the only way to do it, right? If Zuckerberg would have said, well, I don't think it's appropriate to answer HR decisions, like he was stonewalling with Senator Hawley, he might have been scared to leave that place, right? Because he knows it's true. He's got the data. They discovered, and what they discovered was so bad that they had to come forward with this information, because if someone else would have come forward, it may have destroyed them. I don't know if you remember that Wall Street Journal report, which I would bet was leaked by someone from Facebook. If I remember right, I think that's exactly how it went. They decided that they were going to do this. Anyway, I want to bring in someone from the Media Research Center, because this guy knows exactly what's going on. Dan Schneider is vice president of the Media Research Center, Free Speech America. He's with us now. We're about to take a pause because Senator Hawley went overtime on his comments. But Dan Schneider, welcome.
Rich, it's always great to be on your show. Your audience is super smart, so it's always fun to talk to you and have them participate.
Oh, thank you, brother. And we're coming right back to you because you're also super smart, and I want you to help break this down, because you guys at MRC, the Media Research Center, you guys do an amazing job, especially with your Free Speech America project. So we're going to learn more about that and get your reaction to Zuckerberg and the rest of the CEOs today on Capitol Hill. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. Our special guest, Dan Schneider. Don't go anywhere.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. And we continue our discussion with Dan Schneider, Vice President of the Media Research Center's Free Speech America project. And Dan Schneider, you heard the clip from Senator Hawley. You heard the apology from Mark Zuckerberg. I think, personally, this was a brilliant move on behalf of Hawley, because it left Zuckerberg with very little wiggle room to be defiant, to try and be slick, and to just walk away from it. I think he had to own up to it. What do you think?
Yeah, we've seen Mark Zuckerberg not do well under pressure, both in congressional hearings and also in interviews. And when he's pushed, he tends to cave. He tends to reveal the truth, which if you were his general counsel or communications director, you'd be furious that he's coming clean. But for the most part, these other tech executives did not come clean. But right. Zuckerberg eventually came clean, and he apologized, to these families for the harm caused by Facebook. And then, of course, he somewhat gratuitously added, and that's why Facebook is leading the efforts to, create all these products to help people down the road. Yeah, that I'm sure he felt like he had to put a fig leaf on to cover up his nudity that he just exposed everyone to. But Facebook, Twitter, the old Twitter, all of these firms, they have been engaged in lots of bad conduct, and they can't help themselves. They make so much money, and they are out to change the world in some radical left-wing way. They just can't resist all attempts to be indecent.
Yeah, sadly, right? But I think it was a good move on their behalf. Now, overall, I don't know if this is just a little bit of fodder for guys like me on the radio that want to talk about this. I don't know how much comes out of a hearing like this other than, I guess my question to you is, in your opinion, do you think this type of expose really brings in that many more people to the national conversation from the American public saying, oh, look, I bet you didn't know this was going on? Or do you think it's the usual suspects, the same people that already knew what was going on, that are waiting for action to be taken?
See, Rich, this is why your show is so good, because you really see the next level. You really go beyond the surface. Why was there this hearing today?
Yeah.
Did we learn anything new? Did anybody not believe that Facebook, causes harm? I mean, we learned some new data points that, girls 13 to 15, 37% of them are exposed to wanted, unrequested nude pictures. I mean, there were some details, but we already knew the basics of this. So why the hearing today, the same week that Alejandro Mayorkas has articles of impeachment filed against him? I wonder if, who gets to control the hearing schedule in the Senate? Well, Chuck Schumer. And who in Judiciary? Well, Dick Durbin. Democrats, some of the most radical Democrats in Congress, decide this week to hold a hearing on, the tech companies that, by the way, the Democrats hate. These particular ones, the Democrats hate.
Yeah, everybody hates them.
So look, I don't want to think of myself as a jaded person, but I've been working in this town a long time, and I've seen these leaders operate on both sides of the aisle. And you have to ask yourself, why? And I think, it's my hypothesis, that this was done in part to provide cover for the Biden administration and Alejandro Mayorkas from DHS, who's going to be impeached soon, I hope, to direct the American attention away from the bad things of the Biden administration and toward the bad things of big tech.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're spot on because I didn't see anything major come out of it that would change anything. They weren't really pushing any new legislation. And honestly, I don't even know if I support a ton of legislation that would be imposed on a private company. I think you can impose legislation that'll protect children. Obviously, that's always paramount. But apart from that, it seemed like a warmed over, more of the same kind of thing where, if I was Hawley, I would have done the same thing. Said, I could tee this up pretty good. I already know what to say because, it's the same story and there's nothing really revelatory that's coming out of it. And I think that highlights the problem that we see coming out of Washington on a regular basis is that it's almost designed, I shouldn't say almost, I think it's literally designed to always perpetuate more of the same so that when push comes to shove, they know exactly what to do. They know what to say. You get Nancy Pelosi saying the Constitution every now and again, right? If you push her enough, she'll say things like, it's about the Constitution. I doubt she could even, she's even read the Constitution, but she'll always cite the Constitution. And Joe Biden goes out there and he starts saying things that, we got to make things in America. It's so silly to me, but this is what they do, Dan Schneider. And I feel like it's such an insult to Americans. And what do we do?
Well, let me just point out a couple of the good guys in this hearing. Senator Kennedy, he called out one of the worst culprits in this whole thing, and I do think there is plenty that Congress should do to address the abuses of big tech. And I'm a conservative, a genuine conservative of the classical liberal stripe. Lots of people might think that it's odd that a guy who distrusts government as much as I do sees a government role here, but I certainly do. But Senator Kennedy, the crafty, clever, smart senator from Louisiana, he called out Chuck Schumer. He said, and I've got the quote somewhere around here, but essentially it was, go to Amazon and buy a spine, Chuck, and get some of this legislation moving. You heard Amy Klobuchar, complain that these bills don't move. Well, why don't they move? Dick Durbin is the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman. Chuck Schumer is the majority leader. They can bring any bill up on the Senate floor anytime they want. So, big tech, these senators were complaining big tech does nothing. They don't have to, because the Biden administration protects them. They don't have to fear Congress. These Senate Democrats don't do a thing. And look, the Senate, House Republicans, they're kind of divided on some of these issues, and nothing happens there either. There are serious problems, and no formal body of members of Congress are pushing any genuine reforms. There are some individuals who are great, but the Senate Democrats, they are running and hiding. By the way, Rich, here's a blinding glimpse of the obvious. These CEOs were compelled to appear, some technically voluntarily, but they were told if you don't appear, you're going to have a subpoena. Some of these CEOs refused to appear without being forced to appear because of a subpoena. So Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin could require any CEO they wanted. So, Rich, where was Google's CEO?
Right.
Google, the worst of them all.
Yep, the biggest
Google,
offender.
who was the subject of the big Supreme Court case where the question was whether Google could be held liable for directing people to terrorists' donation pages, and these terrorists killing people. Could the families of murdered victims of terrorists sue Google for Google actually helping to fund terrorism? So why was Google not in the hot seat today? And I'll tell you the answer. It's because Google is the single greatest asset the Democrats have to win the election in 2024. So Google avoids being a target of this investigation. They avoid having to testify. Who testifies? Well, Twitter, now X. Democrats hate that. And they hate Facebook. They still hate Mark Zuckerberg because Donald Trump used Facebook effectively to help win the 2016 election. And they hate. It's easy to hate TikTok because it's Chinese controlled, so they can say all they want about TikTok. These Democrats cherry-picked the companies they hate and protected the companies they like from public scrutiny. You call me again. Some of your listeners might think I'm awfully jaded, or maybe I just know how this town works.
Yeah, I think it's more the latter, and I think it's okay to be jaded, and it's also okay to understand how the town works, right? That's the reality. I feel sometimes like I'm really jaded too, but I realize there are realities, and part of our responsibility, I think, is to bring those realities to the table so people can see them, so that you can get people that are not jaded. You can get people that are altruistic and idealistic and ready to bring, a new Tea Party movement, right? Only people who are fresh and ready and those happy conservative warriors can bring that kind of action. And sometimes it takes hearing a little bit of the truth to get people going. Folks, we're on with Dan Schneider from the Media Research Center. We're going to continue our conversation straight ahead. I want you to hear what the CEO of TikTok had to say. I remember the last time I heard him testify, he was a little snippy with everybody. Don't go anywhere. Coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Dan Schneider. He's vice president with the Media Research Center. And Dan Schneider, earlier we talked about the CEO of TikTok. His name is Shou Chu, and he had a discussion over censorship and China's data collection with Senator Ted Cruz. Listen to this.
Now, you said earlier, and I wrote this down, we have not been asked for any data by the Chinese government, and we have never provided it. I'm going to tell you, and I told this when you and I met last week in my office, I do not believe you. And I'll tell you, the American people don't either. If you look at what is on TikTok in China, you are promoting to kids science and math videos, educational videos, and you limit the amount of time kids can be on TikTok. In the United States, you are promoting to kids self-harm videos and anti-Israel propaganda. Why is there such a dramatic difference?
Senator, that is just not accurate. There's
not a difference between what kids see in China and what kids see here?
Senator, TikTok is not available in China. It's a separate experience there. What I'm saying is...
But you have a company that is essentially the same, except it promotes beneficial materials instead of harmful materials.
That is not true. We have a lot of science and math content here on TikTok. There's so much of it. I created a STEM feed for 100 billion views.
Let me point to this, Mr. Chu. There was a report recently that compared hashtags on Instagram to hashtags on TikTok, and what trended, and the differences were striking. So, for something like hashtag Taylor Swift or hashtag Trump, researchers found roughly 2 Instagram posts for every one on TikTok. That's not a dramatic difference. That difference jumps to 8 to 1 for the hashtag Uyghur. And it jumps to 30 to 1 for the hashtag Tibet. And it jumps to 57 to 1 to the hashtag Tiananmen Square. And it jumps to 174 to 1 for the hashtag Hong Kong protest. Why is it that on Instagram, people can put up a hashtag Hong Kong protest 174 times compared to TikTok? What censorship is TikTok doing at the request of the Chinese government?
None. Senator, that analysis is flawed. The analysis is flawed. It's been debunked by other external sources like the Cato Institute. Fundamentally, a few things happen here. Not all videos carry hashtags. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you cannot selectively choose a few words within a certain time
period. Why the difference between Taylor Swift and Tiananmen Square? What happened in Tiananmen Square?
Senator, there was a massive protest during that time. But what I'm trying to say is our users can freely come and post this content.
Why would there be no difference on Taylor Swift, or a minimal difference, and a massive difference on Tiananmen Square or Hong Kong?
Senator, could you wrap up, please?
Senator, our algorithm does not suppress any content simply based on
this. To answer that question, why is there a difference?
Like I said, I think this analysis is flawed. You're selectively choosing some words over some periods. We haven't been around as long as other apps.
There is an obvious difference. 174 to 1 for Hong Kong compared to Taylor Swift is dramatic.
There you have it. That's the exchange. I didn't want to cut out a whole lot of context from it. But stonewalling, and more stonewalling. Dan Schneider, walk us through it. Give us your reaction to what you just heard between Senator Cruz and the CEO of TikTok.
Well, Rich, this is the first time I actually heard that part of today's hearing, and I was left dumbstruck. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember this, Rich. I was at Tiananmen Square.
Oh wow!
I lived in China for a year, and my time in China was cut short because of Tiananmen. What did this TikTok chief say happened at Tiananmen? he said a massive protest. That's not the remarkable thing that happened at Tiananmen. Right. It was a massive massacre. The CEO of TikTok couldn't even, be transparent and tell the truth about what happened at Tiananmen Square. He couldn't let viewers and listeners hear what happened. He censored himself. That's exactly what happens with TikTok. And of course, maybe he's technically right that he's not censored anything because the Chinese Communist Party told him to. He doesn't need to be told to. He knows that if he doesn't, there will be hell to pay. Just like he knew he could not say that there was a massacre at Tiananmen Square. He said it was massive protest. This is disturbing that such a huge and powerful corporation on the planet that invades our lives and manipulates our children gets away with this kind of rhetoric. And Ted Cruz was great, by the way. He was a star. So was Josh Hawley. He was a star today. There were some great senators who put the feet to the fire of these people. And earlier I was sort of criticizing the purpose of today's hearing. It was still an important hearing, even if the Democrats were using it to run cover for the border crisis.
Right.
But I was left a little speechless at this TikTok guy. I mean, it's breathtaking. It's kind of like calling the Holocaust,
a
really bad camp out.
And I don't mean to laugh at that in any disrespect, but yeah, you're right. It just absolutely crazy. I mean, I've to this day never seen the full footage of the guy getting run over by the tank, but I've seen some of the aftermath after the riots and the cops are beating everybody to death and these fires on vans and people all over the place. And it was just absolute carnage following Tiananmen Square. And to just trivialize it that way, I think is just unfair, but so true to exactly what China is, a massive censorship operation. Folks, stick with me. I'm coming right back with Dan Schneider.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Dan Schneider from the Media Research Center. And Dan, I want you to tell everybody about the work that you're doing in the couple of minutes we have before the hour rounds out. I know your Free Speech America program and the work that you're doing at MRC are making an impact, and I want you to tell everybody about it.
Yeah, Rich, thanks. And I'll put it in terms of this hearing. This was a very important hearing about how big tech companies essentially are profiting off of child exploitation and have a financial incentive to do so. And it seems like they are taking advantage of that financial incentive. But that is just one of the many, many problems that big tech is responsible for our society. There are big constitutional structural questions like free speech rights. These big tech platforms have been colluding with government to silence us. Everybody listening to you right now, I am confident, has heard about how big tech silenced the whole Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah.
And our own polling shows that did, in fact, swing the election for Joe Biden. 9.3% of Biden voters would not have voted for him had they only known of the Hunter Biden laptop story. But they didn't. Because
now, Dan,
it was all
I just want to make sure you have time to plug the website. Let everybody know how they can follow the work you're doing.
Well, you can go to mrc.org. That's the mothership. That's where you can get all information about Newsbusters, Free Speech America, our work.
Yep.
And we've got investigation projects. We've exposed how this government is doing terrible things to censor us.
Excellent. Folks, that's Dan Schneider. Check him out at mrc.org, and you can follow him on Twitter. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. It's hour number 2, and our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337-8334, Valdez. And again, big tech CEOs were under fire today on Capitol Hill, likely as a smokescreen to cover up what's going on with Alejandro Mayorkas and the failure at the border. And I want to talk about that. We also have a couple other things. RFK Jr. says he may run as a libertarian. I'm going to get your thoughts and more on that in a little bit. And Senator Graham tells Mark Zuckerberg that he has blood on his hands during that big tech hearing. Hezbollah terrorists claim that they're going to stop attacking U.S. troops in order to prevent embarrassment for Baghdad. Go figure. That's kind of crazy. And DeSantis won his case against Disney, where they tossed it right out of court, saying that they didn't have legal standing to bring the case. But we still remain with a lot of problems, right? And problems in education, they stem from a lot of different places. But there's a piece right now on Fox News written by Professor Nick Giordano that really lends itself well to showing the link between how corrupt and toxic our education system has become and how the border crisis is exacerbating that. So I want to talk about that and get into a couple of other topics with Professor Nick Giordano. Professor Nick, welcome, sir.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Ray.
My man. Good to hear from you, brother. And let's dig into this a little bit. How do you see this link between the craziness at the border and what's happening in classrooms across the country?
Well, you and I have spoken about the collapse of our education system. The quality is at all-time lows. Student proficiency rates are at all-time lows. But people aren't paying attention to long-term. When it comes to immigration crisis on the southern border and illegal immigration, people don't realize the numbers that are coming through. So you've had 400,000 minors come through under the Biden administration, and then over 2 million family units coming through under the Biden administration. As a humane nation, we believe in educating children, but the systems are being overwhelmed. So take New York City alone. In 1 year, 30,000 new students enrolled in the New York City public education system. In Denver, Colorado, you have 300 new students per week for the last few months enrolling in the system. And I want people to really understand what that means. First of all, the quality of education is going to go down even further. You cannot sustain that many newly enrolled students and absorb them into the system in that fast of a time. But even worse than that is how the left has done away with the assimilation process in the United States. They moved in favor of this diversity, equity, inclusion model that promotes anti-Americanism. You had over 45 districts adopt the 1619 Project, which is a false history that's been debunked by the right and the left scholars. And yet these students are going to be getting lessons that they're victims, that they're going to be oppressed, that America is a horrible country. Now imagine traveling all that journey in the horrendous conditions to a land of opportunity. Now you're being told that the place you came to is a racist, inherently evil country to oppress them and victimize them. And so how are these grow and go through this system, and how could they ever gain a loyalty and respect for the United States when that's what they're being taught? The left did away with the idea of the melting pot, where when you come to this country, you have to adopt American values. You have to assimilate to the American culture. Now, what the left wants you to do, they want America to assimilate to all the different cultures that are coming here to create a more tribal society. And on top of that, you have the American students who aren't getting the American education. So how can they defend what they don't even know? And this is a recipe for disaster.
I agree, Nick Giordano. I think that this is obviously hurting us, and it puts us in a really, really delicate position because, and again, I was talking about this earlier before you came on, how we have students that were kicked out of class, and these students were kicked out of class so that they could close down a school to accommodate illegal aliens because they were running out of space in the shelter that they put in, and there was a storm coming. I mean, the level of crazy that we're going through to accommodate people that are not citizens over people that are citizens, to me, is unfathomable. But taking it a step further, it's exactly what you're talking about. You're taking people that are coming brand new into the country, and it's almost like when communist regimes take over in Cuba, anywhere else, re-education is their focus, right? Re-education camps is what they do. It seems that what we're doing is the same exact MO, but we're doing it a different way. We're doing it by way of bringing in people to the country. And now that we have these new people in the country, we put them in the classroom to then indoctrinate them, to teach them about America's racist roots, how bad we are, the diaspora of the Northern Triangle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. America bad, everybody else good. And it puts us in a position where you're raising people that otherwise likely would love this country because they're here, like you said, for the American dream. They're here to make better lives for themselves and for their family. They're here to do absolutely everything that they can to make their lives better. And instead, they're being met with this disdain from their teachers, professors, et cetera, saying, we all hate America. And I'm wondering, other than securing the border and shutting it down, how do you see us actually remedying this situation, Professor Nick Giordano?
We need to change the curriculums. We need to get rid of this DEI model, and we need to start instituting a pro-American curriculum that actually teaches real American history. And I'm talking about the totality of American history, both the good and the bad. The left likes to say that, you just want to sugarcoat American history and not speak about the bad. No, students are getting the knowledge about the bad. They learn about slavery, the Trail of Tears, Japanese internment camps. What they can't do is pass a constitutional test or a citizenship exam. My semester just started. Not a single student was able to pass these exams.
And that's your tradition, right? You always do a citizenship exam on all your students?
It is my tradition. I have to keep it going. You would think they would, they would talk to each other and they would figure it out that they're going to get one, but apparently they don't. But it gets a little bit depressing because, again, when you look at concepts like liberty and freedom, you have to be taught those concepts. If you're not taught them, you're willing to give up your liberties fairly easy. And isn't that what we saw throughout the coronavirus? How many people were just silent with decree after decree after decree, not standing up? There are so many today that believe that government gives us our rights rather than understanding that our rights are inherent and the government is actually limited. And that's what makes our Constitution so unique and different than every other constitution around the world.
Folks, we're on with Professor Nick Giordano, a political science professor from Suffolk Community College in New York. He's host of the PAS Report podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that. And we're coming right back to discuss his piece in foxnews.com. And I also want to get his take on some of the 2024 candidates. You got Nikki Haley out there speaking on the Breakfast Club, the hip-hop station in New York, saying that she blames Trump for divisive politics. I think that's rich. But anyway, we're going to get into that and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He's made it chaotic. He's made it self-absorbed. He's made people dislike and judge each other. He's left that a president should have moral clarity and know the difference between right or wrong. And he's just toxic. I mean, I think a lot of the things he broke needed to be broken, but he doesn't know how to fix things again. And it's not okay to just break. You've got to fix it and make it better.
So, Professor Nick Giordano, welcome back. And you just heard Nikki Haley say that Trump is toxic. Trump has made politics divisive. She makes it sound like he single-handedly did all of these things. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that believe that that's exactly the case, right? That before politics were perfect before Trump came around. Nobody was ever at anybody's throats. There was never any type of discord. We never had political duels where people shot each other. None of that ever happened before the days of El Trompito Donaldus Magnus. Right, Professor?
That's true, because I never heard a president say elections have consequences and I won, so sit down, John McCain. I've never heard Republicans be compared to the mullahs of Iran. So and our current president that told everyone that Republicans want to put blacks back in chains. Nikki Haley, I don't know what she's doing, because the way to win a Republican primary is not through Democrat voters. And it seems like that's who she's trying to appeal to. And it's amazing, because in her candidacy, she has yet to criticize the bureaucracy that has thoroughly abused its power against Trump's administration, against parents at school board meetings, against traditional Catholics that just want to go to Mass. I have yet to hear any criticism of the abuses of power that we've witnessed in the bureaucracy.
You know, what I find interesting, Professor, is how it seems to me that her purpose, again, is that the same of Chris Christie's, right? I don't think Chris Christie was looking to win the nomination and become president. I also don't feel like Nikki Haley's trying to become president. I feel like they have one sole purpose, and it is to kind of serve as the Republican in the room that is critical of Trump. And even though that's not how, like you said, that's not how you win a primary, I know a lot of people, and I say it all the time, I like Nikki Haley. I don't like the way she's conducting this campaign, but I do like her. And I talk to people that say, I like Nikki Haley, but I don't think she has a shot. I wouldn't, at this point, from what I've heard her say, I would not want her to be president of the United States. We already have people like that in office. We don't need another one. But before she ran against Trump, I thought she was very level-headed and a very intelligent person. And I guess my question to you is, what is your take on her purpose in this election?
Well, it's weird, because when you look at people like Nikki Haley and the Never Trump Republicans, and you look at Democrats, they keep doing the same thing that created Trump in the first place. They keep on pushing the same policies that led to Trump becoming president of the United States in the first place. Yeah. And you think they'd know that by now, but they haven't seen that. So it really is amazing. I don't know what role she serves in this election anymore. Now, I'm not saying she should drop out. She can make that own decision. But if you're advising President Trump, you just say, don't even acknowledge her at this point. You're up in the polls in South Carolina by 30 or 40 points. You're winning all the Republican states by bigger margins than you won before. He's a former president of the United States. So while he doesn't have the bully pulpit of the president, he's Trump. He knows how to capture that bully pulpit. But, yeah, she serves no role right now, and I don't know what the thinking is behind it.
Me either. And I find it really interesting that we're in the space that we're in, because, I mean, I guess somebody's got to do it. And I also understand there's a place to capitalize, right? Ramaswamy went into his campaign, ended up coming out of his campaign making money on the deal. So I understand for some people it can be lucrative. Obviously, the amount of PR, just put it this way, right? If your name is Vivek Ramaswamy, and this is not a slight on him at all, but not an easy name, right? And today it's probably at least a household name in most households that watch the news or listen to at least talk radio. And that's, I think, a big achievement, right? To make a name like Vivek Ramaswamy a nationally known name. And he achieved that by running for president. So I think Nikki Haley's doing something very similar, making herself out there quite a bit. However, she's alienating the base. So to me, it leads me to believe that she doesn't really care to be a Republican. Her move, very similar to a Liz Cheney, is going to be, elsewhere, whether it's in media or just being that anti-conservative type of Republican, the country club Republican, if you will. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and normally, I mean, when you look at these races, normally they're just jockeying for vice president. I mean, you see it with Tim Scott, right? Senator Scott, he's actually positioned himself very well for a potential vice president slot. You would think that Haley, seeing what the poll numbers are, that she would start to try and position herself to perhaps maybe get that vice president slot, but it's clear that's not what this is about.
Yeah, and again, each of them, like Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, they seem to be trying to ingratiate themselves with the campaign, to support Trump, to really to be there for him. Haley obviously is an opponent, and she's not going to do that. But she seems to me to just be not interested, right? How, if he's leading the way and you want to woo his voters, right? That's the way you beat him, is by taking away his support and getting them to vote for you. But it seems like she's not playing that game. She's simply trying to cater to people that don't like Trump, which are clearly a minority.
Well, and I think there is a split in the Republican Party today. I think that the Republican Party, as a people, they're tired of the policies that the Republicans were pushing for quite a long time, forgetting about ordinary people. And so you're starting to see this change. You're starting to see a movement back towards a weird sort of conservatism, because it's not like former President Trump is a real conservative, but you're starting to see that push back towards conservative. Maybe we need to limit government. We need to shut down the border. We need to be fiscally responsible. And then you have the other wing of the Republican Party that's saying, no, we need to throw money all over the world at all these different countries. We need the immigrants coming in to keep down, the ages, and the corporations need the workers, the Lindsey Grahams of the world. So I think Nikki Haley is aligning with the old establishment wing of the party, and I think that part of the party is dying out.
Wow, that's interesting, because I feel like I don't think there's ever a comeback for them. I think they just have to become
Here's
Democrats.
the calculation that they're making. They're making that calculation that if Trump loses, the Republican Party goes back to the old school days. But I think those days are gone, and they haven't realized that yet.
I think you're right. Now, Nick Giordano, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what? Yes, when we come back, I'm going to talk about immigration. But I want you to tell everybody how they can find you on the PAS Report.
Everyone can go to PASreport.com. They can also go to campusreform.org, see the great work Campus Reform does, keeping everyone informed about the college campus craziness that we're witnessing, and at PAS Report on all the social media channels.
Thank you, Nick Giordano. I apologize for that. I was getting some communication in my ear from my producer, and I was talking to both of you at the same time. All right, Nick Giordano, check him out on Twitter. Check him out on his podcast, The PAS Report. And you can check him out here. He'll definitely be back. Nick, good talking to you. See you soon, my brother. You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You have the right to close up your border. You don't need bills that complicate it and make it to a level that nobody's going to be able to do it. And the minimum was 5,000 people a day, if that can be right. It's hard to believe that that can be right, but they were negotiating to allow 5,000 people a day. That's a tremendous amount. Nobody wants to have that happen to our country, and they're still not going to know where they're coming from. Right now, we have no idea who these people are that are pouring into our countries. Last night I watched where they're beating up police officers in New York City, a gang of people that just came in that didn't speak English. Nobody knows who they are, where they come from. And very importantly, they come from, I can tell you, they come from jails and prisons. They come from mental institutions and insane asylums. And they're terrorists. They have a lot of terrorists coming, too. And we don't want them, I'm sorry, So we had a very strong border.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez here with you and keeping you company till 1 a.m. tonight. Listen to this. You've got President Trump talking about this story coming out of New York where illegal immigrants, 4 of them, from what I could see on this video that went viral last night, of these guys kicking 2 cops that were scuffling with a potential suspect, trying to get him into handcuffs. And these guys come and they just start kicking the cops while they're down, trying to handcuff the guy. I mean, absolutely insane. And he's right. When Trump says, where do these guys come from? Where do you find people that just start kicking cops, right? I know that 10 years ago, hard to find people like that. There were a handful, but now it seems to be the majority. It's the norm. You got these 2 cops on the floor, and here I'm watching the video as we speak, and they're kicking him, and they're kicking him, and they're kicking him, and they're trying to get the guy out of there. And while he's trying to subdue the guy, get him in handcuffs, the other guy comes, he kicks him from behind. I mean, they look like Antifa. It's absolute bedlam what's going on in this actual video that I'm watching. And even Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, weighs in and says maybe we should get them a one-way ticket, meaning deport them. And now some people are coming down on her. So who else would I call besides my Gumbari Cheech, right? My buddy Curtis Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels, right in New York City. Curtis Sliwa, welcome back, sir.
Oh, great to be with the liberty-loving Latino again, Rich Valdez.
Sir, thank you, brother. And I saw this and I said, where are the Guardian Angels when you need them at a moment like this? What's going on in New York City, Curtis?
We're in Times Square, patrolling that area that has been basically taken over by the illegal aliens from Venezuela. And it's not like they just came there on their own. They were invited here by Eric Adams, swagger man with no plan, mayor of the illegal aliens. They've been put up in hotel rooms in the gateway to the world, Times Square, at $400 a night. We give them culturally appropriate food, iPhones, smartphones, health insurance, whatever they want, the illegal aliens get. And yet they've gone out into the streets. They've observed the American way of jostling and going in and stealing products out of stores, shoplifting. They realize there are no ramifications, there are no consequences for American citizens. So they've decided to follow in our footsteps. And now they're forming gangs, always to protect themselves against other gangs who are already there. But what they eventually do is they turn on their own people, they shake them down, they extort. And this vicious cycle is beginning now. And you saw it in its very worst form when they gang assaulted 2 police officers who were just trying to move them from one corner to another corner. And I think the most interesting thing, Rich, if you look at that video, you said, okay, you had 2 cops trying to move about 10 to 12 of these bad hombres. Mm-hmm. But notice the cops, they don't have nightclubs. They have nothing. Nightclubs were taken away from them a long time ago. And let me tell you something.
Wasn't that replaced with the expandable baton?
Yeah, but they never pull out the expandable baton. It really doesn't work. It's not effective. It's not a deterrent. But the good old-fashioned nightstick, I can give you a wooden shampoo. Richard Valdez, your mother would have felt the vibrations. Or I could crack you in your kneecap or your shin. So even if you get away, you'll be limping a few blocks away, and other cops can come and pick you up because they'll know that had to be you.
Right. Yeah, and Curtis Sliwa, this to me, and again, we've seen things like this before. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, I thought about you when I read this story. It was one of these jails, or not jails, I'm saying it wrong. It's probably like a jail. It was a shelter for illegal immigrants. Might have been the one that you're always protesting outside of. And the security guard got into a knife fight with one of these guys and had to cut the guy. And it's when the security guard has to have a knife on him, things are really, really dangerous, Curtis.
Well, that's Randall's Island. That's a huge tent that was put up again, the house gang that controls it now are the Venezuelans, and they stuff underneath their mattress all kinds of shivs, knives, other weapons. Basically, once you go into that tent, you answer to the Venezuelan gang. So if you're from North Africa, your other parts in there from Asia or other parts of South America, you do what the Venezuelans tell you. If not, they'll slice you. And they basically have taken complete control of the many tents that are up in New York City. And they remember, Joe Biden named them a special migrant group. They are considered untouchables. And they know no matter what they do, no matter where they do it, maybe they'll get arrested, but they'll get cut loose. L'Immigrant Immigration Naturalization Service, ICE, will never be called because these are sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. So they know they got it like that, and they're taking full advantage of it now.
Folks, we're on with Curtis Sliwa. He's founder of the safety patrol group known as the Guardian Angels. You've probably seen them on television. They wear the red sateen jackets and the red berets. And some of you who are at least my age, maybe a little older, might remember seeing them in the background in one of the Charles Bronson Death Wish movies when they were in Los Angeles, and the Guardian Angels are right across the street. A big icon in New York City, seeing the Guardian Angels, and their leader and their founder, Curtis Sliwa, is on with us, a broadcaster in his own right, a legend in his own mind, as he likes to say. And we're coming right back with Curtis Sliwa. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We have not concluded negotiations, so we will keep going to get this done. Democrats have always been ready and willing to have a debate on the border. We want to get this done.
Of course, if you don't recognize that voice, it's the voice of Senator Chuck Schumer. Now, I remember, I don't know if it was this summer or a few summers back, a couple of years back, where I was in the Puerto Rican parade with Curtis Sliwa as he was shouting at Senator Chuck Schumer, calling him Chucky Schmucky Schumer. And the senator, of course, looked over at Curtis and just kind of rolled his eyes, and he didn't want anything to do with Curtis. Curtis Sliwa, when you hear Chuck Schumer, what's your first reaction?
Schmuck, putz, Fisher, Schmendrick, just a guy who is so self-absorbed, responsible for these open borders, and most importantly now using as an excuse that people, because they follow Planned Parenthood and use marital contraceptives, they haven't produced enough offspring. So we don't have enough worker bees. So now he's justifying the invasion of illegal aliens to fill slots that American children and grandchildren refuse to work or just won't show up to work. And so basically we listened to him. We went to Planned Parenthood. We used our marital contraceptives, but he said we did too good a job. So now we need the illegal aliens in to be the worker bees.
Unbelievable. And again, I want to reiterate here, while they're having this showdown in Congress over funding, you've got Biden lying through his teeth saying, that's Joe El Baboso Biden, lying through his teeth saying that he needs Congress to act so that he can actually do his job, which is a straight out lie. And then we've got these four young men between 19 and 24 years old. Listen to these names, right? I was waiting to hear, these guys are all like illegal immigrants from South America. I thought we were going to hear names like Juan or Jose, But no, we got Kelvin, Darwin, Wilson, and Yorman are the four individuals that were arrested, along with a Johan Boada. who's the fifth migrant charged in the gang assault on 2 NYPD cops in Times Square last night. Curtis Sliwa, I'm glad that these guys got caught. And this guy Bawada, there's a picture of him here. He gives the camera not one, but 2 middle fingers because these guys were all released after beating the crap, kicking them while they were down. They were all released without bail. It's what I'm reading in the New York Post.
Yeah. Well, think of it. Think of it, Rich. Remember, the term that the Biden administration and Mayorkas uses is they were paroled into our country. Well, if they were on parole, revoke their parole, and then put them on a jet and deport them, give them to ICE. But see, they won't do that in New York City or New York State because we pride ourselves on being a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. And as a result of that, our law enforcement, our criminal justice system has been told by our local officials, especially Eric Adams, swagger man with no plan, mayor of the illegal aliens, not to work with ICE. So if you don't work with ICE, and they know who's coming and going, who's coming across the border, who are the shot callers, which are the arrivals from the worst countries that are having problems in which they may just be transporting their problems here. Think of Maduro. He's so happy. He's been able to release young men of military age who could either have been a nemesis to him by joining the insurgency, or they're just drug dealers and gangbangers and hoodlums, so they have emotional problems. He releases them, cleans them out of his jails and mental asylums, and sends them north to America, where the papachulo, Joe Biden, embraces them and says, give me your tired, give me your poor, just keep sending them across our borders. This is madness. This is absolute madness, Rich.
I love Joe Biden, the papichulo. That's great. And that's who he is, right? He's bringing everybody in. He's literally like a pimp, and he's bringing everybody in on our dime. Curtis Sliwa, I want you to stick with us. When we come back, I want to hear a little bit about your day job when you're not out on the streets on patrol, riding the subways, dealing with the bad hombres in New York City. I want to talk about Curtis Sliwa's Rip and Read, and we're going to talk about that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos and amigas. And many of you guys know that I'm a native New Yorker and moved to Jersey as a teenager. And before I did this program, I for a number of years, I was on the air in New York City doing local talk radio in New York. And I don't think I've ever shared this part of my story on the air, but my very, very first time on the air for like a full radio show, I was substituting for Juliette Huddy. She used to be on the Fox News Channel and had a radio show with our guest, Curtis Sliwa. And I was scheduled to do some other on-air work in Philadelphia and on the Mark Levin show when Curtis heard about that. And he said, well, you know, the next time Juliette Huddy's absent, you can fill in for her. And lo and behold, it happened like the next day. So a day or two later, I was in the studio with Curtis doing my very first full radio show, 3-hour show, live on the air with Curtis Sliwa. And what an eye-opening experience it was. And it's great to have him here. And he still does an amazing radio show in New York City. Curtis Sliwa, welcome back.
No, my hands across the land of opportunity that has produced for us the liberty-loving Latino from Brooklyn, as you mentioned, to New Jersey, and now across the nation.
Thank you, Curtis Sliwa. Always a pleasure and always inspiring to talk to you. And I was just telling our producer during the break of what it was like. I learned so much in that first show that I did with you about broadcasting. And it's safe to say that Curtis Sliwa has probably forgotten more about broadcasting than I know to date. And I hope to catch up. Now, Curtis Sliwa, when you're out there flexing your radio muscles, tell everybody that's listening what a rip and read looks like with you when you do your show every afternoon. Curtis, did the deep state get you?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I
Go for
just
it.
got knocked off my chair here. My cats attacked me.
Oh, that's great. Live radio, folks. Cats and everything.
That's right. My cats took great umbrage that Rich Valdez was dominating my time and I wasn't feeding them.
Well, Curtis, tell everybody what the rip and read is like. What was your show like today?
Rip and read that's when I do the deep dive and I expose the fake, phony, fraudulent, fugazi politicians, whether they be Republicans or Democrats, because they'll all of a sudden they'll create a headline and the people, they'll wonder whatever happened to that, because they'll make a promise or they'll start spending money and then they're not accountable. And then there's no transparency and there's no bid contracts. And Rich Valdez, in the world of politics, you say contract and I say, I want to know who's getting the kickbacks. So today I was doing a deep dive on Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, swagger man with no plan, mayor of the illegal aliens, who suffered a crushing defeat in his city council as they voted over his veto. He had vetoed a bill, and rightfully so, that would have forced the police to write down a report on every interaction with every citizen that they would have on an 8-hour patrol, which would mean, they'd be doing his paperwork.
Right.
The problem, what he did, was he never lobbied the city council. He never spent his political capital on trying to convince them to vote in what was in the best interest of a law and order city, as opposed to a lawless city, which we're increasingly becoming. He loves ribbon cuttings. He loves photo ops. He loves to hear himself talk, but he does not get down to the business of administering the city. I lost to him the first time, but I'll tell you this much, Rich Valdez, I'm coming back at that sucker this second time, and I'm going to make sure he ends up becoming a haberdasher, because he wears such fine $5,000 customized suits.
Oh, that's terrific. And in the minute we got left, or 30 seconds, Curtis, 2024, how do you handicap that?
Well, I think it really depends on the female vote. That's something that the Team Trump has got to really work on. But it's a long way. Right now, if the election were tomorrow, I think this country would reelect Donald Trump president of the United States. But it's a long way to November, and I don't know if Papa Chulo got what it takes. He may end up being told, hey, it's time for you to get up on the shelf, Papa Chulo, Joe Biden. It's Barack Obama and Michelle Obama time with Gruesome Newsom from California.
Ay, bendito. Curtis Sliwa, everybody. Curtis, thanks for being with us, my brother.
Oh, anytime, my liberty-loving Latino friend. It's my hands across Rich Valdez's America.
Amen to that. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. We like to call it Open Phone America. And if you want to join us, feel free, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. So it's Wednesday night going into Thursday. And here are some of the headlines I'm looking at. We've got Biden. He's decided to finally visit where that train was derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, and that's for the 1-year anniversary of the train derailment. He was widely criticized for not showing up. As a matter of fact, they didn't have water and whatnot when it happened, and the former President Trump actually showed up and gave out bottles of water at this particular scene back when that happened. And we have a clip of Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, explaining exactly what's going on. Check this out.
When the president is in East Palestine, will he drink the water there?
I mean, look, what I can tell you is the president's focus has been to do everything that he can to support this community from day one. We get what's going on the ground. We understand what's going on. That's why we've had the EPA. That's why we had DOT. That's why we had HHS. That's why we've had FEMA on the ground. This is not about some sort of like political stunt here. This is not what this is about. This is about this president being a president for everyone and showing up for this community. That's what this is about.
All right, so that is Karine Jean-Pierre trying to play her miniature violin and make this very, this is what it's about, and that's what's going on, and be very whimsical about it. The fact is, Biden didn't go back when he went. She doesn't care if he drinks the water or not. She's just got to come up with something clever to say. And when people didn't have water and it was unsafe, President Trump was on the scene giving out water when it happened. So, and he wasn't president, right? It's safe to say, I don't think he'd even announced at that time. He was just former President Trump and trying to, do what he believed was right. Even if you say it's a cheap political attempt, he was there doing it. Biden didn't even do the cheap political attempt, if you want to go down that road. So, good for him. Good for Trump for doing the right thing. And come on, yet one more failure, one more disappointment from Joe El Baboso Biden. What are you going to do, right? That's just what we're kind of used to dealing with. Then, let's see, there's another story here. Portland, Oregon is now declaring a state of emergency over what? Fentanyl. They decriminalized drugs back in 2020. Now officials are declaring a state of emergency because of the use of fentanyl. I mean, if that isn't a classic situation of stupid liberal policies coming back to bite you in the rear end, I don't know what is. But this is what happens when you worship at the altar of these fools that think that, decriminalizing everything should stay criminal, in my opinion. Right? People want to decriminalize this and decriminalize that and this and that and the third. And we don't call them prostitutes now. We call them sex workers because we've been going after the wrong people. That part I understand. If you want to stop prostitution, stop the people that are buying the prostitutes, right? And stop the prostitutes. You arrest everybody, just like everything else, right? People that go to buy drugs, they arrest everybody. That's how that works. It's how I've watched like more than one episode of Cops. I've seen it happen. So come on, let's get real here. This is the way they do police work in tons of places. We don't need to sit here and start making excuses for people saying because of this and that and the third. And honestly, this is what's ripping apart the fabric of our country. It really is. Saying that, people are allowed to go looting in the daytime. They're allowed to go into their local convenience drugstore and steal what they want because of the way that their ancestors were treated in the past. Bravo, Sierra. BS. Not real. And I think that's the easiest way I can put it. How else does anybody say that this makes any type of sense? We've got to teach people to be kind, teach people to be respectful, and that's it. I mean, this is our goal in life, right? To just raise good people as parents. And if those who don't have parents, the rest of us have to, take on this adage of it takes a village and try and teach the next one, the person next to you. We have to become a little bit more oriented in the idea of community, or we're never going to have a community again. But the governor of Oregon has now declared an emergency in the city of Portland a few years after the state became the first in the nation to largely decriminalize drug use. Oregon had paved the way as the first state to decriminalize drug use. Paved the way to what? Stupidity? Where they had people like zombies? I mean, this is the issue that they ran into, passing what they called Measure 110 back in 2020. Instead of incarcerating drug users, the measure focused on addiction and recovery, with Portland police officers handing out citations. You know, it's interesting. While that was happening, they decided in New York to hand out vending machines that were dispensing crack pipes, clean syringes, you know, just encouraging more public drug use. So you can have people like that, like you do in Philadelphia, right? People in Philly, there are people in the streets. It's like a zombie land. They're just getting high and walking around and falling down on the streets, living on the streets. When I worked in New York City, my studio was 17 floors above Madison Square Garden, the iconic Madison Square Garden. And I can tell you, I would climb over the bodies of people when I would have to walk through Penn Station. My brother had a business in Penn Station, and occasionally I'd help him out, and it's absolutely crazy. Sometimes I'd jump on the subway there, and if I didn't walk, like if it was too cold to walk, and literally you have to climb over people because they're everywhere. They're just strewn about the way. It's really just something else. So I say all of that to say that when you allow public drug use, it brings problems. And according to the piece in CBS News, people can have a chance for treatment and have their fines waived if they contact specific rehabs, but calling the hotline is voluntary. And this is exactly why they had these problems in Oregon. And now, fast forward, 3 years of having this law, nothing actually happened. They didn't deliver on their promise, and the voters weren't happy with what they were getting. And that's according to Washington County District Attorney Kevin Barton. So the hope was that this more humane approach, and I don't think it's inhumane to say, oh, excuse me, you have a drug problem and you're using your drugs right here in the middle of the street in a park where little kids can see you or people can trip all over you. That's unsafe. It's a hazard to public safety, and you've got to go. That's not inhumane. That's called responsible. Inhumane is exactly what they allowed. They allowed people to defecate publicly, to sit there and live publicly, to be naked, to do what they do, right? Because guess what happens when you create a community of people that live on the street that are high out of their minds? They do whatever they want, and they don't care who's watching. And they start to think that they own the streets and that you're in their home. You literally have a situation of the inmates running the asylum. It's just crazy. But that's where we are. So, you know, congratulations to the folks in Oregon. For the first time, I actually agree with you. I think Joe El Baboso Biden should take a page from your playbook, and he should declare a state of emergency across this country, shut down the border, start going after fentanyl in large part, and, you know, not just when they get one every now and again, but really wage war by putting pressure on China to stop that stuff from coming in and putting pressure on Mexico to stop producing the pills once they get the fentanyl from the Chinese. Those are the two key ingredients, Mexico and China. Once they're both put on notice, we'll be in better shape. It almost makes me think of that time that former President Trump said, well, maybe we need to declare Mexico a narco-terrorist state, and then we could use the military to curtail some of this. And they thought he was crazy. I think it was brilliant, and I think that's exactly what we need right now. And the folks in Oregon, for the first time ever, seem to have gotten it right. It's time to declare a state of emergency everywhere, starting with the southern border. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're going to get to your phone calls momentarily if you want to join the conversation. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And let's hit the phones here. Let's go to our buddy Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, listening on WDEL. Doc, go right ahead.
Yes, couple points. I'd like to make your listeners aware of a very dangerous movement that's afoot in this country, this Wall Street bat called the thirdway.org. I thought it was the Third Wave, but your wonderful call screener, Tom, corrected me. It's called the thirdway.org. It has roots here in the corporate center of Delaware, where there's big money off Wall Street. The two people behind it in Delaware are a scion of the DuPont family and Ben DuPont, our former governor, Mike Castle. These two clowns are masterminding a nationwide effort to deny President Trump the nomination for the Republican Party. That's point one. Point two, about the police in New York City. I've traveled all over the world in my time with the military and without the military, specifically the Western European countries. And in West Germany, the police are armed with automatic weapons, male and female. They travel in pairs. They have big dogs. I would urge that our police here do the same, Rich. I want our police here to be armed with not only semi-automatic pistols, high-cap pistols, but submachine guns, trained in their use, of course, and big dogs. And just treat these sub-animal criminals the way they should be treated, like animals. Shoot them down the streets if they offer any kind of unlawful resistance, and let their fate be to them. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, run it by me again because I'm not sure I got it. You want to track down the DuPont guy as a criminal?
No, he's not a criminal. The DuPont guy is named Ben DuPont.
But who do you want to go after? I missed it. I kind of cut in and out my headphones.
I want to go after the common criminals and the druggies that are taking over our major cities like New York City.
Listen, I agree with what you're saying. I think we need a very aggressive approach to policing, in particular fentanyl, right? And you have to prioritize what's going on. I think we need to shut the border down and tell every last person, I'm sorry what's happening in your country, but we're not doing any asylum right now. We're done right there. Right now, we're done. It's shut. We're not taking any new people. Matter of fact, we may have to get rid of some people because we're over limit. And then once that happens, we have to really watch out for things. I think Trump was onto something when he, threatened to label Mexico as a narco-terrorist state, and instead of using diplomacy, to use the military. I think that was great, and it was a good deterrent because these things have to be done. There's but so much you can do, right? At some point in life, we come to realizations that we can't allow people to continue to punch us in the face. And asking someone while they're punching you in the face, hey, why are you punching me in the face, is not an effective strategy to stopping them or protecting yourself. So I think it's key for us to say, you know what we have to do is stop these people from hurting us, stop the influx of this stuff. And I agree with you. Put a SWAT team out there. Put as many SWAT teams as you can. Deputize local SWAT teams. There's so many county sheriff's offices that have a SWAT team. I think we need these SWAT teams to aid and assist the movement against fentanyl, the movement against all of this stuff, and then perhaps we can work on other topics. But I agree with you, Doc. That's the way to move forward. You can't clean things up unless you start cleaning, and if we don't start cleaning, nothing's getting cleaned up. I think that's the simplest way to put it. Doc, thank you for your call, my brother. Good to hear from you. Big shout out to everybody listening in Delaware on WDEL. And let's go to Justin. Justin is in Cumberland, Maryland on WCBC. Justin, what's up? You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
How you doing today, sir?
Wonderful, thank you.
I really I have to shorten up everything I was going to say because you and two other people just said it, and I really just cap it off. I had said earlier that around the world and then coming to our place now, it seems like this kind of thing either gets solved by brutal mentality or the point of a gun. And then as a veteran, I don't want to see that in my own country, but this is my major question. If you sign up for the military and you're supposed to defend your country against all people, foreign and domestic, when the foreigners become domestic, what do you do as a regular citizen?
Well, I think, again, you being a military man, I did a little bit with the police reserve, and I think they use a similar command structure. You always follow whoever is in your chain of command. And I think that's what most people are going to do. I don't remember any point in our history where people were just like, I think that guy's nuts, we're going to revolt. Even like during the Civil War and whatnot. I think, you had Jefferson Davis and they started that whole movement there and got Robert E. Lee to lead that charge. But ultimately, I think people chose a side, and there was a side to choose. Here, we're not at that point, right? So we have one side, and it's the American side, the United States Army or the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard. They're one side, and there has not been a division or an alternative suggested to date. So I don't think that we have any choice but to do what we're told, and I think that's what soldiers do, is they follow orders. Again, it's my thinking. I agree with you that we have these people, but I don't think people that are being invited into our nation, and again, whether they're terrorists or not, right? Whether they're coming here to make a better living for their family or they're part of a sleeper cell that wants to kill us later. Neither one of these people came here uninvited. Joe Biden, our president, has invited them into our country, has literally cut wire fences open to allow people to come in. And I've seen the videos of this. Right? That's the guy that sits in the White House in Washington, D.C. I have to hold him to blame. So if he is our domestic enemy, then I think we have to go through our chain of command, if you will, right? Our options. And the options that we have as the citizenry are, when you don't like your president, you vote against him. If you think he's done something so egregious before Election Day and you need to get him out even sooner, you write your congressman and you recommend or demand an impeachment. And I think we have an open inquiry into the impeachment of Joe Biden. I don't know how seriously that's being taken because we have a Senate that's run by Chuck Schumer. And I think as long as Chuck Schumer is breathing, he's not going to ever have a trial against Joe Biden. And I don't think we'll ever get a conviction against Joe Biden. We couldn't even get a conviction against Donald Trump, and they hated him. So I think an impeachment is an exercise in futility, but a good message sent. They did it twice to Trump. I say we do it 4 times to Biden. That's how I would do it. But clearly there's a different agenda in Washington. And if you can't impeach the guy, then you got to bring it on Election Day and say, you know what? Tell every last person you got to vote against this guy. Because that's the only other way. So I don't know that it's really going to come down to a point where people in the military or anything like that have to make a call and say, are you my new domestic enemy because you're coming from another country? I think, nobody's acting alone in the military. Everybody's, a larger part of a whole and following some sort of command structure. That's the best I can do on that one. Thanks for your call, Justin. I appreciate you. The music means we got to take a quick pause, but we're coming back. Big shout out to WCBC in Cumberland, Maryland. And when we come back, the rest of your calls, Charleston, South Carolina, Boise, Idaho, Evergreen, Montana, and more, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And we are looking at some of the audio clips from earlier today where the CEOs of big tech companies were held to account by members of Congress. And, of course, some suggest, and I agree, that it's likely because there has been some real heat being brought against the Biden administration because of the border and because of the impeachment effort against Alejandro Mayorkas. But nonetheless, there was some interesting things that came out of today's hearings. And one of them was Senator Marsha Blackburn, who sounded like she was deposing Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and something else, I think, over sex trafficking that is happening on social media. And you'll remember there was a big article in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was about a year ago, or less than, about a year ago, where they clearly pointed out that there were actual sex trafficking rings that were finding some of their victims and finding some of their customers through Instagram. And I found that to be remarkable because I use, it's probably the main social media that I use is Instagram, at Rich Valdez with an S, by the way. And I enjoy it because you get to see videos. They're kind of short. It's easier than Twitter with all these little comments that are going around. Twitter's just too busy for me. And but I go on it every now and again. But my point is, it was a really interesting thing, and she really beats up on Zuckerberg. And, of course, I want to get to your calls on this as well. So if you're holding on, stick with me. And if you're calling in, feel free, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. But Blackburn really comes after Zuckerberg here, in particular over sex trafficking that's happening on his social media platforms. Listen to this.
There are a lot that is slipping through. It appears that you're trying to be the premier sex trafficking
Of course
site
not, Senator.
in this country.
Senator, that's ridiculous.
No,
Senator,
it is not ridiculous. You want to turn around and
we
tell
don't want
these
this
people
content
that,
on our platforms. And we,
why don't you take it down?
We do take it
We
down.
are here discussing.
We do
We
more
need
work to
you
take it
all
down
to
than-
work
than-
with
than-
us. No, you're
You know what's really
not.
interesting here? What's really fascinating here is he says, we are taking it down. Let me tell you something. I bet you anything. I don't have much to bet, but I'll bet you, whatever it is, if I was a betting man, that if you put something about Hunter Biden on Instagram, that it would get flagged as misinformation, disinformation, possibly violating community guidelines within an hour, maybe 2 hours. I bet you anything. And I bet you anything, if you put something about one of these coded things that have to do with this child trafficking stuff, that it probably wouldn't get flagged. And I think we have a real problem when you can't say something that really happened. I shared a Newsweek article about Hunter Biden and got a note in my inbox saying that I was violating Meta or Instagram's community guidelines about, I don't know what, something. I think it said about graphic imagery and what. I didn't add any pictures. This was an article that had a picture of Hunter Biden with, some stuff blurred out or whatever, but it was clearly not. I mean, there's regular Instagram pictures with chicks with their butts hanging out that are more revealing than what I shared about Hunter Biden. And it wasn't even original to me. I shared a Newsweek article, and they flagged me and said that I couldn't do that. So it's clear to me that either Mark Zuckerberg has no idea what's going on, or he is incredibly, grossly ignorant of what's actually happening on the platform. Go right ahead.
You are not. And the problem is we've been working on this. Senator Welch is over there. We've been working on this stuff for a decade. You have an army of lawyers and lobbyists that have fought us on this every step of the way. You work with Net Choice, the Cato Institute, Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and Chamber of Progress to actually fight our bipartisan legislation to keep kids safe online. So are you going to stop funding these groups? Are you going to stop lobbying against this and come to the table and work with us? Yes or no?
Senator, we have a...
Yes or no?
Of course we'll work with you on the legislation.
Okay,
I mean,
the
it's
door
been hard
is
to...
open. We've got all these bills. You need to come to the table. Each and every one of you need to come to the table, and you need to work with us. Kids are dying.
Kids are dying. And that's the end, the bottom line, right? Not only are kids being abused and exploited when it comes to sex trafficking on social media or anywhere else, but ultimately they die. And, I can't help but think that this is should be top of mind for a lot of people. People should give a damn about this. I just don't know if it's happening. So kudos to Senator Marsha Blackburn for that. And Mark Zuckerberg, I think he's got to do a better job. One of our guests earlier, Dan Schneider, he pointed out that Zuckerberg gets very rattled when they put him under pressure. And I think she's right. He really starts to freak out when she, says what's actually happening. And she wasn't making any outlandish claims. She was saying, I don't think it was outlandish to say you want to be the number one sex trafficking social media web platform. And the reason it's not outlandish is because, again, this was found by an investigation they did into themselves and was reported by the Wall Street Journal. And they are the biggest until TikTok came around and I think ate their lunch a little bit. So not a necessarily unfair statement of her to make. But he definitely started to squirm. And, instead of arguing with her and telling her that that's ridiculous, take a firm stand and say, absolutely not. Not that I disagree with you. We just don't do that. We take it extremely seriously. We would never allow that to happen. And every single instance that we're aware of where we catch anything where we're working with the FBI's unit on child trafficking. We're working with whatever authorities that we have to work with to make sure that this happens. And we don't even ask for them to provide a warrant or a subpoena. We will willfully help any law enforcement that's looking into child exploitation, period, the end, because Facebook stands by that. And as their CEO, I want to assure you that we're doing everything we can to keep kids safe. Why not say something like that? It's not that he's not as eloquent as I am. For sure, the guy speaks well. He knows what he's doing. He didn't care. He was upset because she was calling him out, and he was squirming because he knew he was guilty. That's the bottom line with that one. Now, I want to play one more from Senator LaFonza Butler. She's now a Democrat from California. She replaced Barbara Boxer, was it? Or Feinstein, Senator Dianne Feinstein, excuse me. And she is now grilling the co-founder of Snapchat, Evan Spiegel, with the topic of conversation being how easy it is to get illegal drugs on Snapchat. Listen to this.
Mr. Spiegel, there are a number of parents whose children have been able to access illegal drugs on your platform. What do you say to those parents?
Well, Senator, we are devastated that we cannot
To the parents, what do you say to those parents?
You know what's fascinating here? Again, somebody asks you a question that pointed. What do you say to the parents of children who have died or who have accessed illegal drugs on Snapchat? And you're the CEO of Snapchat. Your answer shouldn't be 15 seconds of silence and then, that's not acceptable. Again, firm responses. You're testifying in front of Congress. You need to be like, Madam Senator, absolutely. We stand against this and we stand with you. We're never going to condone this. This is not what Snapchat's all about. We're free speech, blah, 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 whatever type of platform you want to be. But let people know very clearly and very firmly that you don't support this. But again, dumbfounded, as if he'd never heard of this, as if he was not testifying in front of Congress. Like, what is wrong with these people? Go ahead.
Mr. Spiegel.
I'm so sorry that we have not been able to prevent these tragedies. We work very hard to block all search terms related to drugs from our platform. We proactively look for and detect drug-related content. We remove it from our platform, preserve it as evidence, and then we refer it to law enforcement for action. We've worked together with nonprofits and with families on education campaigns because the scale of the fentanyl epidemic is extraordinary. Over 100,000 people lost their lives last year, and we believe people need to know that one pill can kill. That campaign reached was viewed more than 260 million times on Snapchat.
All right. I think this one was a little better. He was a little nervous in the beginning, but at least he said something. Now, he did not inspire any confidence for me. I didn't walk away from that going, you know what? My kid has Snapchat. I'm going to let him listen because I feel like that guy, the CEO of Snapchat, he really, he sounds like he's a dad, too. He sounds like he really cares, like he's really doing the right thing. No, he sounded like a scared little boy that was reading a script. I think you've got to be convincing. And again, I'm not trying to give a lesson on public communication here, but I mean, come on. You're testifying before Congress. People are listening. You got parents sitting in the gallery listening, waiting to hear what you're going to say. Don't sound like a schmuck on wheels. Anyway, getting to your calls as soon as we come back. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I am here this morning to beg of my colleagues to help us force the administration to take action. We have to stop this now and put Americans and Americans' border security first.
That is Speaker of the House commenting on the progress of the deal for the border security package. And he says it's dead on arrival once it gets to the House, if it's not H.R. 2. And I doubt it's going to be that. Let's get your thoughts on everything. If you disagree, you get moved to the front of the line because we believe in free speech here. Let's go to San Francisco, California, listening online to Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Let's check in with our buddy David. David, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Well, thanks, Rich. I'm glad you played that clip of the speaker. The guy is such a lying phony. I mentioned to you a couple of times now that there was a dumbass congressman from Texas a couple of weeks ago, probably almost 3 weeks ago, who admitted that the Republican Party has no intention of dealing with the border issue. They have no intention. And they want to do the government shutdown, which is going to ruin America's credit rating. And the fact that they have sabotage on their mind, and the reason why they don't want to have a budget is because they claim it's the border.
Yeah, I don't follow the logic there, but I'll say this. So I think what you're describing is a political process, number one, right? This is a typical thing. When one side is going against another side, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, if they don't agree on something, and they're going to go back and forth and they're going to stonewall. That's typical, right? It's not like they're going to go, hey, I think we should have border security. You know what? I think you're right, pal. All right, great. Let's shake hands and do it. It doesn't work. It's Washington, D.C. It's politics. It's real life. And when there's submitting proposals that include allowing up to 5,000 people a day to come across the border, this is a very tricky thing because we should not have that, right? There are days that during the Trump administration where there were only 50 people a day that were crossing that border. And there is President Obama's former Secretary of Homeland Security that said if 500 people a day crossed that border, we were in a disastrous situation. So here we are in real life under the Biden administration where we have 9,000, 10,000, 12,000 people crossing that border in a given day. I think there was 3 days back-to-back 2 weeks ago where they broke records. When you have a situation like that, David, it clearly puts America in a bad spot. So kudos to every last Republican that says we would never approve a deal like this one. We shouldn't. Everybody should hold their breath and never, ever, ever vote for a deal like that. And I'm glad Speaker Johnson says that it is dead on arrival. Now, if he is the fake, phony fraud that you say he is, then he will approve this deal and we'll have a horrible border deal. But this doesn't stop President Biden from doing his job, from doing what he has to do to protect the American people. And I think that's the number one thing that we need to do is protect Americans. And we're not protecting them by leaving an open border. I hope that makes sense. I appreciate it, David. Thanks for your call. Folks, your calls are coming up next in the speed round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, here we go. It is the speed round. Let's go to Mark in Washington, Indiana, WBIW. Mark, what's going on with Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, there's a lot of questions about that, but one thing I've always wondered is why a person that's non-elected, that's super, super rich, has such influence on things in the world that just make you kind of say, what's going on? Because, like, for me, to build or anything like put a fence around my property, you have to get a building permit. He supposedly is building a $270 million nuclear bomb bunker in Hawaii.
Yeah, and I'm sure he got a permit. The difference is you and me aren't mega billionaires like he is, and I'm sure he can get whatever permit he needs, right? He's got all the money, nearly all the money in the world. And I think that's what it is. I mean, ultimately, the people with the most influence are never the people that are elected. It's always the rich people, right? It's always the Bill Gateses of the world. It's always the Donald Trump. Look at Donald Trump, how he's so influential, became president of the United States. I mean, ultimately, having money really goes a long way. Doesn't, it's not the be-all, end-all, but man, does it help, right? And I hope to have more of it one day, like these guys do. Mark, thank you for the call. Let's continue to Chicago, WGN. Let's go to Jim. What's going on? What do you think of Mayorkas?
Okay, Mayorkas, just an analogy. If Mayorkas was a plumber and the customers are complaining that their pipes are leaking and nothing's being done, even though he's trying to work on them, and this has been going on for 3.5 years or more, possibly, the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, would pretty much take his status away.
I think you're right. And we need to take his status away with an impeachment. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later. Jim in Chicago, big shout out to WGN. Thank you, sir. Let's go to Phil in Butte, Montana, KXTL. What's going on with Obama?
I just wanted to make a comment real quick, Rich. In my mind, I know it might sound kind of silly, but I don't think it's ever been definitely proven that Obama himself is a citizen. And I don't
just to interrupt, I all I could say is Obama eventually did release his birth certificate. It doesn't mean that he didn't spend time in Kenya. I think that part's been proven. As a kid, he went to a school there, a madrasa, but he did release his birth certificate. And I guess it's up to you or me to be an expert on birth certificates and say, well, that's not real. I can't do that. I know that had he never released it, then maybe not. But I remember when he did release it. And I guess, in the spirit of being a decent person, I have to say, all right, if you put your birth certificate out there for the world to see, then I should, accept that it's probably real. Phil, thank you for the call. I'm with you. Plus, he's guilty of so many other things. I don't need to fight with him about that one. Let us go to Paulie, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Go right ahead.
Hey, a lot of show, little time. Hey, real quick, Rich. Excuse me. Trump, he was right on the border the first time. He's right this time, what he says about it. Now, you've got some tattoos, and you said he was taking some flack for it. And you're over 18, right, Rich? So
yeah, I am. You're right. And I waited till both my parents passed away to get that ink. It's funny. If you call tomorrow, we'll pick up where you left off. This guy keeps trying to beat me up on Facebook, telling me that I'm a disgrace because I have some tattoos. Maybe that's the truth for a lot of people, but it's not for me. Thanks, Paul. Hasta mañana, America. God bless you. I'm Rich Valdez.